Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are live right now on the CannaBuzz community. We are stoked to have you guys here. We have a special show today. First off, our guest today is West Coast Connoisseur Jacob. He's joined us today, so we're super stoked to have him. And we also have a giveaway that we're going to be doing for all of our members that are watching us in the live today in the CannaBuzz community. So, a couple of things I need to hit real quick. First off, you can be a part of these sorts of experiences in the future. If you're watching this on YouTube or whatever, and you're like, "Hey, how do I get to be a part of this thing?" You should just join our community. Search CannaBuzz in the App Store, download the app, and join our community. Or go to CannaBuzz.app in your browser. We'd love to have you. Use code New Year at checkout to get 50% off your first month. And once again, we're doing that giveaway for all of our live viewers. So if you are viewing the show today in the live stream, make sure you enter something in the chat. Just say anything. And what we'll do after this live stream is done is I'll pull a list of everyone that has entered something in the chat. And we'll do a random giveaway for these Zooper plushers. JR, do you want to say anything about these Zooper plushers?
Yeah, this is a drop that Tiki's doing right now, and it's a lemon cherry gelato by a combination of pancakes by Z3. And you also, if you purchase the pack, you get a free pack of Zopinator that comes with it. So you can find that at Neptune Seed Bank, or you could find it at TikiSeeds.com. So it's a good time, and we're going to be giving a pack of that away today. So stay tuned, folks. It should be a good one. We're excited about that. Another thing I wanted to mention is Tiki's doing a 50% off on all of the Tiki swag that he's got at his shop. So if you want to go over and grab some hoodies, I grabbed a hoodie, and in any other gear, get on over there and grab some 50% off. So good deal.
Sweet. And then last thing, we are going to be doing more giveaways in future live streams. I've got a bunch of Grove bags, big ones, small ones. I've got one that's like half the size of my body. I don't know how many pounds you could fit in that Grove bag. So stay tuned for more giveaways. Join the community. We'd love to have you. But let's get to the show. All right, so I got our special guest today, like I said, is West Coast Connoisseur. We are super stoked to have him today. He's originally from a small town outside of Seattle. He lived in Tahoe and eventually migrated down to LA, and he now finds himself in Oklahoma, and we're going to find all about his journey with cannabis and what he's up to. And West Coast Connoisseur, his company, is a family owned, fully integrated cannabis company specializing in exotic genetics from seeds to clones to high end flower on dispensary shelves. So thank you so much for joining us, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you carving out time for me to be a guest here.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm really glad to have you on. It was nice meeting up with you and at Cowboy Cup, and I'm glad to see you guys did well there. You placed well there at the Cup, and it's good to see that you're kind of bringing that higher level of quality and genetics to the Oklahoma scene. So we're really glad to have you on.
Yeah, we started out here right when it first opened, and we've kind of just kept the quality model, and we've never really looked back.
Excellent. Well, let's get started. We always ask our guests, when and where did your cannabis journey kind of begin?
Well, okay, so there's two levels of the journey. There's the first journey, which is, when you first get into smoking weed. And first probably got into smoking weed and hanging around that. I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and some other kids I was hanging out with had started smoking weed, and sometimes we all fall together on the same lines, and we all started smoking weed, and um, never really looked back. And then I didn't probably start selling weed or stuff like that till I was probably 15 or 16. Maybe I was doing it real small time, getting an ounce and breaking it down to buddies or whatever it was, but nothing, anything more than that till I got a little older. Um, and then probably when I was about 15, 16, I started. So I lived in a small town outside of Seattle. I had about, 5,000, 6,000 people at the time. And so to get any good weed, you actually had to go into Seattle. And so I started making bigger trips into the city to get more higher quality flowers because that was, where my bread and butter was. There was only three people where you could get weed from where I grew up, and most of it was really shitty. So whenever you got weed from the city of Seattle, it was always much better.
Fire, yeah.
So I probably then really started getting into selling, real weight then, and just you never looked back. The more people I actually find out to that I talk to in the California scene now are kind of people who were up there around the same time. There's a lot of intertwining, obviously, in the networks and in the community, and so from there, I guess probably I guess I probably moved to Tahoe in 2010, and from there started, getting even more weed and selling even more weed. Being right close there to Grass Valley in California made things really easy for a lot of us.
So you mentioned when you were growing up in the Seattle area that you didn't really feel like you and your buddies were kind of emulating a gangster lifestyle. You were more emulating an entrepreneurial lifestyle. Can you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about that?
yeah, so when in Seattle, and especially where I was growing up, it's like an island in the middle of Pacific Ocean. There's no gangs. Um, there's no there's no violent crime. There's been one murder in the town in the last 30 years or something, and it's the only violent crime. Um, someone's television is stolen, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so growing up, it was kind of the thing. Not until you got into Seattle where you're dealing with, um,
Real
like
gangsters.
real gangsters, yeah, real
Yeah.
gangsters, and real, like I, was getting caught up with some guys who were tied to some Vietnamese guys, international guys, and they're not playing no games when they're international based and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But there was none of that where I grew up. And so you know, I would get caught by, teachers or other people's parents and stuff like that. And to me, it was kind of like, well, I'm just trying to make money. It's not a big deal. Like, obviously you can look around and see that I'm not influencing violent crime on Bainbridge Island.
Right.
It doesn't exist. So, um, I got in trouble too, and we're such a small town that the fire truck actually I sold weed to the fire chief's son, and
Mm.
he ratted on me, and then they pulled the fire truck up to my parents' house. Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
oh.
So, but like that's the kind of small town I lived in. There was no so like a lot of us, when we were, me and another kid from a young age, who I still am good friends with. He and I were building our bankrolls from a young age, off of cannabis, not off of our other jobs. And so, it's funny, like the L's that we took in high school are different than a lot of the L's of the older generation, but they're the same. They ended up in jail. We ended up with all of our weed getting taken more often than
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
So like I really think of, I was really able to move on this mindset of it wasn't that you couldn't go to jail, but um it wasn't the same, for especially in some of those outer reaches of Seattle. And like quickly, by the time I'm 16, they've decriminalized everything. So I can't remember what it was. You could have 2 pounds at the time, maybe, or something like that. So like again, you just knew you weren't dealing with the same level as risk. You look at these other states and they're like, if you have 2 drops of it in your car, it's a felony and you're
Yeah.
going to jail.
Yeah.
Um,
And if it's
and
your
so
third felony, you're going for life.
right. And so there was none of those worries to me
Yeah.
as you know, so growing up, again, it creates more of an entrepreneurial mindset, I believe, than a lot of people who um have kind of like whatever you want to call it, a flip mode mindset. How do we double up? How do we push someone out of territory? Thinking of all these things rather than how do I innovate my business from within to create more sales? And obviously, at the time it's all word of mouth. No one was on the internet yet and stuff like that. But so we thought of ourselves as young entrepreneurs going and getting work and bringing it back to our tiny little town and trying to distribute it. We never thought of ourselves as gangsters or, you know, uh, like we're coming up and stuff like that. Like it was never really, you were from a small little town. It was just keep it quiet and build your bankroll.
Right. So what what kind of trouble or what were you up to in your college days? What were, kind of moving out into your college and going from there?
So when I got to college, it's like where I started going from like 2 pounds a week to 10 pounds a week kind of deal. And everything just became way more accessible, way more free. And so coming from, going on and off the ferry boat was a whole thing. They had dogs on the ferry, so you had to have it was a whole thing. And so now just being able to move freely in California really, and being on a college campus that had as many people as my entire town, had really allowed things to start to flow. um and man, I mean, we were getting so much random weed at the fucking time, man. It was crazy. And because Grass Valley was just so popping, um, people, I mean, people's parents I went to school with would come to me and be like, "Hey, I've got 100 pounds. I've got,
Wow.
a field of weed." I had people's parents I was going to school with who had mobile grows, who had mobile pipe shops, who had, um, I mean, pretty much every crazy. And again, this is just what the NorCal community breeds. And like coming from Seattle, which did not have anything like this, I'm like me and this one other kid are the only kid who are really to go balls deep into weed. And you get here and there's 100 kids way more balls deep than you in weed.
Right.
Um, so that was a really cool experience. And getting to, just start meeting different people and different grows. And a lot of, I was into the strains and everything at that point and stuff like that, but I wasn't doing any growing or breeding. Maybe I grew my first plant at the end of junior year or something like that, just a single, um, that turned out pretty rough and stuff, but actually kind of gave me actually an idea for that. All the growing that you'd read on forums and stuff like that, I feel like people made it so much more complicated than it actually was. And so actually doing that, just taking a clone and, flowering it in the window over the summer kind of deal, um, started to make my brain turn. It
Hmm.
started to make me realize that, and it's so funny. You read that you need all these certain ECs and all this monitoring equipment, and you're like, I don't have any of this shit. Like, I'm not going to be able to read pHs and ECs and like, I mean, I don't know how to do any of that shit. And then obviously, soil creates a lot of those buffers and barriers, and just planted in soil and fed tap water. And I mean, didn't end up with great product or anything like that, but it was fully grown buds that I was like, okay, this is kind of manageable. Like this isn't some super scientific process.
Right.
I mean, it can be, but you can get
Right.
away with doing the bare minimum too. And right about that time, Natural Hash and I started living together, and that was probably 2012 or 2013. And you know what's crazy? Natural Hash, and shout out Natural Hash and Hose Beast right here, probably like 2012, 2013. These guys were coming to me with rosin in 2030. Like, and it's feels so far to think about that we're like a decade removed from those guys coming to me with rosin and saying like, bro, you got to try this. And I was like, you guys are crazy. Like, you know, like, I mean, like there was BHO at the stuff in time, but rosin, like, I mean, it was my first introduction to rosin too. So we get into, you know, just this further evolution of my cannabis in college of just, um, you know, we get into concentrates and that whole thing explodes. The whole weight thing explodes. You know, I dabbled obviously into growing at that point, but nothing insane or crazy. No setting up lights, no panda paper yet, anything, or even going that far. Um, and so, but you know, when I get out of college, so actually I met Miss Jackson. If you guys ever see his flower, he's a small company in Orange County. But he was also in Tahoe at the time when maybe when I first got up there, maybe about 2010, 2011. And then he had gone to LA. And so after school, I hit him up and he was like, oh, bro, I'm rocking down in Orange County kind of deal. Um, you know, if you move down here, like you at least know you can get some work from me. And that was kind of like a whole thing for me because if I was going to move to a new area, like I couldn't rely on being dry. I wasn't going to drive back up and forth from Tahoe or Seattle. Um, so that was one of the things that really allowed me to leave Tahoe and get to a new area.
I imagine it was hard to leave that access to clients, you know, because when you're up there, you've established yourself, you're in a college scene, you have way more access to end users, I guess you would say. And
Yeah.
so
Consumers.
moving to LA had to be like, I'm about to give all this shit up and start over, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and definitely, you know, I thought about it, but it didn't really hit me till like, you know, maybe like 1 or 2 months in when like you're sitting there with work and the sales are really slow compared to what they used to be, right? You know, because I used to just have a gazillion people buy every day, just, you know, needs an eighth, needs a quarter, needs an ounce, needs a half, needs an ounce, you know, two people come by, need ounces, you know, next thing you've sold, you know, 2 pounds in a day of just broken down work.
Yeah.
And then you go to like, you know, you meet a couple guys in your building, you know, I started a new job down there so you could sell it to some guys you've worked with. Like it just, you know, it wasn't going the same. And so so I started working with a venture capital firm because in college I built a solar powered cooler. And so that got a lot of traction and stuff, but the project never ended up working out. And so that one of the companies that, for lack of a better term, scouted the project during that ended up hiring me. And they had some cannabis investments at the time. They had a clone, like a nursery, they had a dispensary, they had a CBD lean company, they had a whole gambit of different cannabis investments.
Hmm.
And they you know, took me on to take over some of those responsibilities, you know, a youthful infusion, as I've
That's
always called
cool.
it.
Were they out of LA? Is that where they were out of,
Long
or
Beach.
oh, Long Beach? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were right
Interesting.
there. Yeah. Right by the airport in Long Beach. So they're all, you know, roped up in the industrial district down there. And so then I ended up taking over. So at first I ended up helping the CBD lean company. I was kind of on that team for a while. And then I got switched over to the nursery and the clone side of things. And then I ended up taking over the nursery and clone business. Just, you know, really found my footing in it and talking to farmers, and they really liked working with me. And there was always other work to be done outside of selling clones because I was, you know, selling work or whatever else is going on. So there was always good synergy. Um, The people I worked with always were they were like, "How do you get invited into every single grow, man?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. I just, I think it was always a thing about my demeanor and kind of my pitch of what I had going on and what I had to do, or always was able to get me access into places that a lot of people couldn't."
Right. So we were actually just going to kind of double click on that point right there, which was how once you started kind of getting access to clones or cuts from different people and access to different grows, like how did you start making that happen?
Well, so like I always had a little bit of it just from going to farms and buying work anyways, but when the clone thing happened, it went absolutely berserker. There was points where we were selling 10,000, 12,000 clones a week. So you were seeing a lot of grows. And I mean, hats off to the cat who built the website at first. And this is kind of where it all started. Is there was a clone website, and I mean, to me at the time it was insane. This guy built a website. You could literally go in and buy, click like it was a regular website for anything else, buy clones, but then you do the transaction at, like based off of email or some remote location or whatever. And this guy would get gazillions of hits for selling clones. But he didn't have any ever stable suppliers. So I went out and found some stable suppliers of clones. So then that's kind of what started unlocking a lot of the access is I started getting access to rarer libraries and was able to start providing more and more value. Um, at the height of the cookie, London pound cake, all that kind of stuff. Like, we were getting gazillions of clones from the cookie greenhouses every single week. And I wasn't the only person. I mean, there would be tons of clone brokers pulling up, buying clones by the 10, 15, 20,000.
Wow. So are these like I obviously you can only share what you are willing to share, but are these like growers that are growing it for legal rec grows or whatever it is, and then they're kind of like slinging stuff on the side for side money?
No, so when it first all kicked off, it was all just black.
Yeah.
It was all just black market stuff. And then obviously, like as some of these bigger greenhouses go up that are medical or quasi legal or whatever you want to call them, the different people started to push the boundaries of the rules different
Right.
levels, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and so like and then, different people like, there was no, like it was just the cookies greenhouse. It was all medical. There was no, like nowadays there's manifests and transport licenses and all this kind of stuff. And there was
Right.
just none of that before. It was like, I got a medical card, you got a medical card, let's run it.
Totally. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, during medical is a lot way easier to do a lot of different things.
And
Um,
so
Right.
now that, and so the breeder cut kind of thing started really popping off, and that whole cut thing about having access to breeder cuts, and was
Yeah.
that?
So that kind of, oh yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go
Oh,
ahead.
so I mean, that all kind of started with I got shacked up with some other people in Long Beach who had the original wedding cake clone. And I was kind of the fall guy to this group for Seed Junkie for giving out the original wedding cake clone. So I was like one of those first Instagram posts where like it was, hey, this guy doesn't have wedding cake and he says he's selling it for $1,000, and this guy definitely doesn't have wedding cake. But from everything of the people I was working with in the back end, we definitely had it kind of deal. And but at that time, two things happened. One, I made a bunch of sales and a bunch of clients from that whole kind of thing with the wedding cake deal. And I also lost my first Instagram account. It was like the first one I got deleted because, they dogpile you on like, this is a fake cut, like delete the account. Um, and from there, I was able to illustrate to some other breeders and other people who I was having, success or building relationships with, whether it was buying or selling seeds or clones or whatever, that, hey, there was a model here to be had. And that some of and from a commercial standpoint, my pitch was, if you think you could sell this pound for 200 or more dollars, And if you could grow X amount of pounds, that, you know, getting these elite genetics should be worth it as long as they can qualitatively add up. And you know, I've bought cuts for as much as $50,000. I mean, I really do truly believe in that value from a lot of standpoints of more if you can sell the pounds for more. Two, with the, you know, the grandpa's gun chest that I bought for 50,000. There's actually better. There's going to be, especially in some of the offspring, there's almost like an extra node on the plant, and so from a grams per square footage aspect, you know, when that starts to add up over a long period of time, it ends up being way more worth on its weight.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of obvious advantages to maybe paying a little bit more for something that you can guarantee is going to give you the results you want, especially if you're on your game. And there's also that notoriety that's kind of built into the cut itself, you know, because if you can attach it to, like, say, this is Brad's cut of the Blue Slushies number 11. You know what I mean? That has value in itself. And I think that whole cut market, you know, where guys are charging, you know, a decent amount for the cuts, I think is easily justifiable if you consider that you can take that one cut home and build an army. You know what I mean?
Oh, oh yeah, I mean, like, we'll, you know, we're gonna do some clone releases this year and stuff, so it's something I encourage everyone to look out for. But I mean, anything that we ever release is going to be a little more expensive, but justifiable through the cost of the result. Um, to me, that's where the success of my programs have always lied, is that anything that I've been willing to put my name on, whether it's from myself or another breeder or something we've just pheno hunted, that I see enough phenos every year that I could really qualitatively call this elite from multiple standpoints. Not just that I smelled it and smoked it and it tasted good, but that we've run
Right.
it and we have metrics on it and that we know across multiple environments what it's going to do. Um, and just having that infrastructure in and of itself, you know, we've run Grape Spritzer, which we'll release this year, and probably 4 or 5 different environments now before we release it. And so a lot of people just can't even say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool, especially like as competitive as the market is today. I mean, like here in Oregon, there's tonnage of boof. I say that a lot, but there is tonnage. So if you want to stand out and you want to be able to operate, your shit better be at the highest level.
Yeah, I mean, and that, you know, here out in Oklahoma, I guess this is kind of like skipping forward in the journey a little bit, but out here in Oklahoma, there's only so much, you know, extreme quality shelf space, whatever you want to call it. There's only so much top shelf space per every dispensary. And when everyone kind of came in with the same plan of I'm gonna grow top shelf, but the dispensaries come back and they're like, dude, I sell a lot of mids, only a little bit of
Right.
top shelf.
That makes sense.
So so that becomes hard when everyone's got the same attack plan on such a small state and everyone's got such big grows. And it's kind of like in Oklahoma specifically, the mids reign supreme, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, makes
That's
sense. I mean, a lot of consumers are gonna probably fall in that price range, right? That's what they can afford.
100%. And, you know, like if you look at Oklahoma's market, I think I saw something the other day, like 45% of the medical sales are in vape carts.
Right.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Makes sense.
And a huge part of your cannabis sales in Oklahoma is edibles as well, right?
you know, actually, edibles are much lower on the list. It's flower one, vape carts two, and I mean that makes up almost 90% of the market. And then so like everything
Really?
else kind of falls out from
Distant.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Well, we're going to talk more about Oklahoma, but before we dive into that, I also wanted to shout out once again everyone on the live stream. We're streaming live right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to join the CannaBuzz community and you could be a part of our live streams. And today, we're giving away a pack of seeds. So if you're watching the live stream, make sure to enter a comment in the live, and that will enter you to win our pack of Zooper what is it? Zooper plushers. There we go. I love that, and I love the packaging on this one. So shout out to TikiMadMan for hooking those up. So yeah, let's talk about Oklahoma. So how did you? What brought you out to Oklahoma, and what are you up to out there?
Okay, so one of my, I say he's my brother. We're really close. Know how a lot of those relationships go for people. He was already working here, and so we came together to do a project. And so we were out of the gates from day one out of here. He, he was always an Oklahoma native, so it was on his radar the whole time. He served time here in Oklahoma on two different offenses, and so it was always kind of on the radar to once that this opened medically, come back and start something. And I mean, I could tell some absolutely fucking crazy stories of getting clones out here at first and stuff of like I mean, we were straight taking clone. We were trying to figure out how to get clones out here without driving them and stuff, and we were doing all kinds of crazy stuff because I'd already shipped them through and stuff like that. And then what was going to happen now was we needed thousands of clones out there. So to get thousands of clones through the transit system was a whole ordeal. And one day, the post office sent us a message that was, "Hey, you got to come to the post office. Um, we've got a package for you, and suspicious activity and blah blah blah." And my partner, who's got absolutely cojones of steel, went over, and I was like, I wouldn't go touch that thing. And
Right.
they right. I was and he was like, "No, I'm gonna go get it. Like, what's the worst? Like we've got medical in the state now. Like, it's mine. It's blah 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 blah." I
Okay.
was like, "Okay, and we'll see what happens."
Yeah.
And he goes over, and there's five big boxes there, and he's like, "Do you know what it's in these boxes?" And he's like, the guy's like, "No," and lets him load him up in the back of his car, kind of deal. And he says like, "Yeah, the postman says like, yeah, there's a bunch of weed in those boxes." And he's like, "And you're just kind of letting me take these?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's medical now. Like, you're good to go with them." And he let him take
Wow.
them, and we drove him off.
It's like
So
That's
it's like the
awesome.
Twilight Zone or something, you know?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was like this thing of they weren't gonna deal with it. It was clones, and they said take them.
Yeah, back in the day, they would call you and say, "Hey, we have this suspicious package here, and we've alerted the authorities. You have the right to come down and get the package if you want, or you could just have us destroy it."
Right.
And of course, the obvious answer is, "Yeah, you can just destroy that."
Yeah. Yeah, and so like there was, I mean, and just it was just a very again, wild westy out here from a lot of avenues. Again, just like early medical over there. There's no manifest, there's no transports, there's no
Right.
any of that stuff, and so like you could just roll up with a pound and be like, "Hey, you interested in buying this pound?" And someone's either got the money or they don't, and you move on. And
Yeah,
um, now that we've got metric and everything like that, all of that has changed.
Right.
yeah, I can
Um,
imagine.
Was what kind of strains were you guys moving in and around? Because a lot of us are weed nerds, so we love to hear about what strains are people smoking at different times and stuff like that.
okay, so when we first got to Oklahoma, we had like pineapple upside down cake, Point Break, White Widow, banana punch. That mimosa was about that time. It was all that symbiotic stuff. Um, all the punch crosses were big. Mac.
Yeah.
Um, what else were we on? We were probably on some Cushments at that point, Lemon Tree, um, anything that probably would have been considered apple fritter or some kind of Cali exotic at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But we're carrying some of like White Widow, and had some hazes and some real just old school stuff too.
Yeah. What I are you? nowadays, are you seeing that people are wanting kind of strains across the different spectrum? I've heard that from the guy from Alien Labs. Watched a couple interviews with him. I think his name is Ted, and he's talked about how people want strains from across the whole spectrum. You know, people want a sativa and an indica.
Yeah, so like I kind of joke about it around the facility. Like there's the store market and then there's the Instagram market. The
Totally,
Instagram market and the real, as we call it, weed heads or whatever. They need these tight purple gelatos and these pungent notes and stuff like that. And they're going to know the difference between a Jack and a Haze, or and they're going to open up to certain profiles. They're probably going to be standoffish of orange terps. Um, and conversely, if you have the medical or recreational market customer, they love haze, they love orange, they love lemon. And like in California, especially in the weed community, these have been outcasted, for lack of a better
totally.
term.
Yeah,
And
I hate
and
orange.
again, like as a person who selected garlic cocktail and distributed trop cherry, I have had a large affinity for orange for a long time, and like I believe that they've always had their place in the market. Even to, like to me, I always laughed about moving a bunch of trop cherry and garlic cocktail, because I was like, everyone says they hate orange, but I can't tell you how much garlic cocktail and trop cherry we went through.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Are you seeing, is it THC percentage still driving a lot of weight? Because I know that, like one of my favorite strains that listeners have heard me talk way too much about is Forbidden Fruit. But that one is one that, I think often when people grow it, especially outdoors, they get it tested, it's in like the high teens or whatever. So it's not stuff that people buy a lot. Is that, what are you seeing, or what have you kind of experienced?
So it just, I hate throwing out this answer, but it just kind of depends, right? So like we
Yeah,
don't show any THC percentages in our store or anything like that. You don't legally have to, so we don't. So we try to do as much of not playing that THC game as possible.
Wow.
But when you get into
Respect.
others, yeah. So
But
when you get into other stores and stuff, though, like we can't sell rainbow belts outside of our own store. It's just the customer, one, is not educated enough to look past that it's got some green weed in front of them, and then
oh,
two, on top of that, the low test results. um
what's low now, like anything below?
yeah,
I was going to say 18 to 22 or something like that.
So anything below like
uh
20, basically.
yeah, I'd say dispensaries seem to have problems, and especially like it also just depends on the kind of dispensary, like there are some dispensaries that have just given into the THC model, and so they live and die on the results. And there's
yeah,
other dispensaries that have not, and so they need a totally different subset of sales points, essentially.
yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
think that THC driven, kind of became a sad marketing ploy to trick people into buying something that maybe is
Well,
not of the best quality.
yeah, and my theory on that too is it gave the big money guys qualitative way to uh, a qualitative way to sell their product, that this
Yeah,
should be worth more because it says this.
yeah.
And because we don't know how to judge cannabis, this
Right.
gives us a way to measure
Right,
the product.
right.
Yeah, and it's the same. I go, you mentioned earlier vape carts. I buy vape carts now because I have to work in an office nowadays for the first time in a few years, and I can't really smoke joints, out and about, and
Right.
and so I get these vape carts, and so I go into the store and I get to see how the bud tenders interact, and they often kind of steer you towards that. Or I ask like, what's popular, and they're like, oh, this is the vape cart that tests at 90%. And they're not like, oh, this is live resin or whatever. It's distillate. It's a 90% distillate. It doesn't matter that it's a lower quality product. It just matters that it's higher THC.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's just one of the great fallacies of the whole market right now. I've heard people say it for years. If anybody could find a way to capitalize and make money on teaching bud tenders on how to be more useful, I mean, they'd be the most useful product on planet Earth in cannabis right now.
Right.
Someone who could come in and teach bud tenders, but again, like that's really tough in and of itself. I've seen, the Trichrome Institute is trying to do educational programs and stuff like that. And but even then, cannabis falls on, just once you start to understand the plant more, it just falls on such a crazy spectrum that unless someone is really willing to open their eyes, you have to just kind of, dumb it down to a certain level.
Right. Yeah, the Ganjier program, I know is trying a
Ganjier,
bit this
another one
too,
trying
but
to do
there's
that.
like drama in the community and all kinds of stuff. But let's talk about, so once you hit into Oklahoma, how did you build that brand? Like you've been moving all around the country, you move to a new city. Each time you've got to build that reputation, build that clientele. How did you build that brand?
Well, so, I was really fortunate out here that, my partner and everything had built a good head start and a good program. We were some of the first people out here to drop in packaged, like black jars. I wish I had. I don't have one over here, but like, there's, these branded little connoisseur black jars, and that's just what it ignited the fire, and it was just there from the start. And so we built a bunch of steam, just right out of the gate. Um, and then probably 2 years into business or something like that, we opened the dispensary. And so that is, was another kind of like the springboard to the next point.
Right.
But yeah,
And
like the
so
original drops like really set us on fire.
what was your branding focus as you went into that retail space?
Clean. I mean, if you've been to a lot of dispensaries in Oklahoma, that they fall short on cleanliness, on organization, on a lot of things like that. And so we just wanted to bring a space that was, like if you came into someone's living room, and connoisseur, clean, black and white branding. Those were all of our focuses, kind of in that element. And we've stayed true to those colors and everything too.
And so you had a clientele in mind as you were building this brand and this type of experience for your customer.
Yeah, I mean, I had such a huge Instagram account at that point. I was probably at 45 or 50,000 followers. Like the day we opened the dispensary, we had 200 people at the door in Tulsa.
That's a good day,
Um,
first day
Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
opening.
for a
Yeah.
first day.
Yeah.
And our first day was crazy too. It was the fiasco of fiascos where, people start coming in through the door, the system crashes, it goes up, it goes down, it's not really working. And actually, one of the funniest points in hindsight, wasn't funny at the time, was the system got working for about 5 minutes, and someone was able to get their order processed and checked out, kind of deal. And so everyone, he walks past with his brown bag, and everyone's getting super excited. They're like, yeah, the system's working again. Everyone's like getting really hyped. You can like feel the buzz in the building. And I had to go out and tell everyone that, hey, by the way, the system just went down again. And like, we're going to close today because I hate doing this to people. And we handed out a bunch of free joints and stuff like that. And, opened the next day. But the first day
Rocky.
was a mess.
Yeah.
Oh, very. I have pictures. If I dug them up sometime of like, our dispensary lobby doesn't normally have more than between 5 and 11 people in it, kind of deal. And there's like 90 people in the front door and in the lobby and snaking around, and you're like, oh no. You're like, good problem but bad problem.
Yeah,
So
nice. So now
yeah.
your company is fully integrated. Can you kind of talk about what that means, being fully integrated, what that process entails, and what you're able to offer your end user because you are fully integrated?
Yeah, so the vertical integration in whatever way someone wants to build it, but it's the process of having the grow, the processing license, and the dispensary all together, and so that you can offer the cheapest, streamlined products possible. That every time that especially now that metrics in play. Every time that you transfer something, every time, this all costs labor and man hours and stuff like that. And in such a competitive market, you have to be as cheap as possible, and as cost effective as possible. I don't think you have to be as cheap as possible, but you have to be as cost effective as possible. And um, the grow selling to the dispensary obviously allows you to baseline your rates for the most effective um, cost to customers. And um, there's one, the effective cost to customers, two, that you can create the most SKUs possible out of your own lineup, and three, that you can deliver them to a customer in a streamlined fashion. So everything from joints to, the processor license unlocks joints, unlocks infused pre-rolls, unlocks all those little things, knickknacks you see on the shelf that you never really think about. That as a grow, when you're limited to just selling flour and your
Yeah.
trim, your revenue streams are extremely limited and capped. If
Yep.
you're just a true farmer, like, and anyone who's just a true farmer listening, you're going to feel this struggle is you only get paid every 5 months or whatever it is, 3 to 5 months, depending on your cycles. Um, and with the processor license, you can get paid every day. The dispensary allows you to get paid every day. It's a game changer for your business. A business that can only make money every 5 months has to really choose how it uses everything. Your cash flow. A lot of growers and people I talk to from the black market don't understand cash flow and stuff like that. And so how to unlock your cash flow to where you're actually making money every day is an absolutely crucial ingredient of the puzzle.
And now
And so
not every state allows the vertical integration, right?
to my knowledge, that is correct, but I don't know who it is. I think like Maryland doesn't allow it, and Florida maybe, or someone like that. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I mean, Oklahoma allows it, and there's a lot of people doing it out here.
And are you able to sell clones in the dispensary as well?
Yes, you have to get another license for that. It's like an agricultural license that you have to get to sell that as well.
And does that allow you to sell clones like outside of Oklahoma to like anyone, or what's the situation?
No, so we kind of here in Oklahoma, we're keeping everything closed circuit for the shelf and everything like that. And then historically, West Coast Connoisseur had just done, for lack of a better term, traditional market clones. So that's kind of where the split now lies, is that connoisseur cannabis and everything like that is an entirely white market metric up business, and West Coast Connoisseur still abides by some of the traditional market stuff, and operates out of California. So
Right.
So you do a lot. I mean, kind of switching gears. You're known for doing a lot of pheno hunting and
yep.
finding incredible genetics. But at the same time, you have to balance that with getting product on the shelf and allocating space and resources for that. So, can you talk a little bit about how you focus on finding new stuff, but yet still provide bangers for the shelf?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we run our rooms here different than most other people. Most other people run, a table of plants of whatever it is. Just say it's sherbet cake or apple fritter or wedding cake or whatever it is, because they get the best results on yield and everything like that. When you're growing for the shelf, like vertically integrated, you end up kind of meeting more of a general baseline, and trying to grow as much as possible to feed the customer, right? So we grow hazes, and we grow sherb, and we grow kush mints and hard candy, and everything in one room. So in one room of 50 liter, we could have up to 20 25 what I would call base strains, where those are going to be for the shelf. And then we'll have almost in every room we have a section of pheno hunt, between 30 and 100 beans per room.
That's good. That's actually good. I mean, 100 can give you opportunities to find some amazing shit.
Yeah, and so, and I also always know that, like, when we start with, like, 120 or 140 beans, you only end up with, like, 60 to 75 phenos or something like that between herms and males and all that kind of stuff, and just there's wacky and like, we just throw away the wacky, shitty plants and stuff like that, so
So what are
it
your kind of protocols? This is kind of off subject a little bit, but
Yeah.
what are your protocols for um when you're flipping to look for intersex traits? What kind of processes are you doing to kind of monitor and watch for that at what phases?
Well, so I mean, I think it's no different than any grower. It's just a daily check, right? You got to check all your plants top to bottom, all the little knickknacks, all the little points where stuff could be hiding. Um, I tell people that we can get less religious in our checks after about day 30.
Okay.
Um, and not to say that you should stop checking or anything like that, because then also there is always late herms, that pop up too.
Like the late
Um,
nanners?
Yeah, like the late nanners, but I'm less worried about those a lot of the time. Pollinating, you've already made through the point where a lot of the
Yeah.
pistils have started to close.
Yeah.
Um, but when you're in a commercial facility, like it kind of you just have to go in above and beyond and being a little diligent because one missed nut is going to destroy a whole harvest.
Yeah.
So it's just we generally like it's nice you have a couple sets of eyes in the facility that are really really good, and just something I want to say is that I'm really blessed that I get to be a face for such an incredible crew of people who really know what they're talking about and working on a daily basis. So, and that I'm blessed that I get to be the face of this hardworking team, and um, that we always have two, sometimes three sets of eyes that end up looking over all the phenos. And, not to say that we haven't missed, late herm here or there or something like that, but like we're so religious about it that I don't, nothing snuck by so far, knock on wood, but not to say it's not possible either.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people who are new to growing, which we have a lot of people coming online, and that's kind of the stuff we try to get information out about. They don't have those set protocols, I guess you would say, for checking for intersexing. A lot of
It's
them get upset and they say, "Oh, this is why I don't like F1s. This is why I like line breeding and stuff like that." But what I'm trying to tell people is this should be a part of your protocol to get you from beginning to end. You really need to, especially nowadays with with the vastness of genetic offerings. You really be diligent about that aspect of because it's on you at the end. You know what I mean? It's on
I,
you.
I I could not agree more because like a lot of people will hand me packs of beans that they're like, oh, there's high herm rates in these. I'm like, I don't care. We're looking for it anyways.
Right.
Um, like, so, and we probably just between all of the spots I work with, we probably go through about 6,000 seeds a year. So it's not like you're 4 to 6,000 probably. So it just depends. And, you're sitting here looking through so many seeds at a time, like, um, respect to some of the guys we've got outdoor working with us that do some of these massive ones for us. And, looking over every single plant is such a chore. Because even inside, when you're done, like day 7, looking over, what's 120 girls that you think's gonna, synthesize down and stuff like that. It's tough to go branch by branch. It's such a fragile stage of the plant's life that means so much. And like, cannot give anyone any other tip than you literally have to go branch by branch, work
Yeah,
your
you
way,
do.
like don't overcomplicate it. Like we're starting at the base, like say you topped your plant, it's got 3 main or 4 main offshoots of it or whatever's off. Well, go one offshoot at a time and off of each base, off of each node at a time. And it if you don't want to do it, it's not for you. But you have to do it. There's no other way to do it. um because stuff sneaks around. Like I can't tell you, like you're looking around a plant or whatever, and then you turn over a leaf or whatever or a stem, and there it is. There's a little nutsack or whatever it is. And if you want to find the gems, you got to sift through the bullshit.
Yeah. And I think, the bigger the plant is, obviously, the harder that becomes.
Right. And that's another thing that I would say for pheno hunting. And, we do a pretty good job of balancing that. Is like, if you're pheno hunting huge plants, looking for herms is such a chore. But if,
Yeah.
like, we pheno hunt, just we give it a little bit of a shorter veg time so we don't have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
your big stretch, your
Yeah.
big
You can be
stretches
in a
will show
one.
up still.
Right.
Yeah. You can be in a 1 gallon and have like a 1.5 foot plant and still determine whether it's going to have those traits or not.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who pheno hunt one plant per square foot. I know people who just grow for the cola and then rerun stuff back. I know people who, there's a million different ways of getting this done. I know people who plant 4,000 seeds and they cull 2,000 of them based on veg speed, and they would rather
Wow.
select through it from that point.
That makes me not
There's
be able to sleep at night. The potential loss makes me not be able to sleep at night.
No, I know, and again, there's a lot of people who just like when I tell them about that style of pheno hunting, they just flat out refuse. Um, but I think there's a lot of power to it too. So it's more like a traditional agriculture outlook, which a lot of people in
Yeah,
cannabis don't love, right?
right.
Um, but at the same time, like he finds phenos that I mean any connoisseur would say is good. He just goes about it his own way.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally. Well,
So there is yeah.
so I guess speaking of quality control and like everything that goes into that, we were going to talk about clones and how it seems like tissue culture that and how that's become, more available in that scene has made clones much more widely accepted because people can trust it more. Yeah, what are your thoughts on kind of the impact of tissue culture and what the clone scene is like these days?
Well, so okay, so my quick touch on tissue culture would be I'm probably not as well versed in tissue culture as I should be. But like I've understood that there's a lot of good information and a lot of kind of like phony, crappy information floating around about TC that's untrue, even from big labs. So I kind of have a guy I use to talk about TC stuff too.
Right.
But at the same time, uh, there's some conflicting information on some of the TC stuff in terms of like what viruses can and can't be removed, what pathogens can or can't be removed, what is the actual what does stuff come back like? Because in my experience, like flowering tissue culture clones has been horrible. Um, and then and that's just my experience, right? So I think there's some definite hurdles to get over in tissue culture, and I kind of am in the mode of letting other people learn on the dollar
Yeah.
and that, and then I will come in later.
Ah, that's very wise. That's how I do. A lot of the things I do is watch other people do it, find them have success, and then try to emulate that success. Would you say that lab testing for viroids and stuff like that, and being able to provide lab testing results, help boost confidence in the cut market?
So I was selling cuts before HLV was a thing, but I think we've always kind of known. I don't know. There's a lot of theories on HLV and dudding out there and stuff, but like to me, it's been a thing for a long time. We just finally got to put a fancy name on it, and so everyone likes to say that they have it. I can't tell you how many people I've been to their gardens and they're concerned about having HLV. That when you do a test on it, it's just a lateral growing branch or a shitty plant, or like, we had some crazy virus pop up essentially this year in our garden that it was on one strain, and you could tell within the first like 2 or 3 weeks of flower, like you were like something's just fucked up with this whole batch. It like just it doesn't even look right. And everyone's first thing is HLV, HLV, HLV.
Right.
And so we go get full panel testing, like, and I mean, for like 13 different viroids, HLV, the four majors, comes up for absolutely nothing. Comes back absolutely clean. Nothing, no viruses that we're testing. And we're even testing for like these crazy viruses that when I'm like Googling on them, they're like stuff I've never even heard of. And turns out to be nothing. We start using, you know, some genetic cleaners and some other, you know, products in the garden. Like you start using just the bacteria cleaners and stuff like that, and whether it's a xerotol or whatever it is, and next thing you know, like these little problems that started being major problems start to subside. And so I think a lot of times, like when we see these things going on in our garden, a lot of times we haven't seen all the bugs and viruses of cannabis, and we're really quick to point our fingers to it's HLV, it's TMV, it's whatever the virus is. There's a whole gang of them, and that was kind of my experience in like freaking out about the garden and everything like that. And you know I mean, imagine, guys, we spent like $4,000 testing this genetic for different tests for us just to get told essentially to use some xerotol and it fixed the genetic from whatever little bacteria or pathogen had affected it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you really got to know what you're looking for, and and it's tough. And so while again and also like the more you understand about the HLV and the testing and stuff, like it can be hiding in different parts of plants. So if we send off a plant for a sample and get it sampled, and it's really hiding in like a lot of times I think people don't understand the HLV is hiding out in some of the weaker parts of your plant. And so if you don't take on some of those weaker parts of the plant, you could literally test positive even though you have it. And
Right.
so, just keeping good general plant health to me is like a better rule of thumb. I actually believe that you can, spark HLV or some of these other viruses by having poor plant health. It's just like an animal in the animal kingdom, or like, a person, who there's, weird diseases where people's, proteins turn into fats and stuff like that. And what's that caused by? Oh, that was caused by a genetic disorder or by, stress or some kind of onset in that person's life, that created this, health issue. And I don't believe that the plants are any different.
I would agree with that. I think that what is it? Their secondary metabolites and immune system all play a key role into what is infected or not infected or damaged or not damaged.
Yeah, and so and like so that's where I've learned like that keeping good, clean, healthy moms is like really the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Obviously, like if you're gonna go sell cuts or something, like go get your HLV tests and stuff like that. Just because it's $100 just to make sure that you don't absolutely fuck someone else's garden.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Shout out to Farmer Freeman. I think he just released some of his testing kits that you can send in and he'll do testing for you. So we always got to show some love for Farmer Freeman.
See,
So
and
now, go ahead.
that's the cool thing people are getting into.
Yeah. So, do you, as in the cut market, do you pretty much gear yourself towards the high end cuts for a higher price, or do you also have like a wholesale aspect of it where you're, wholesaling large? Because I know, like say King Kong clones, they're not out trying to sell trades. They're just
Right.
selling onesie twosies. So are you kind of going in that direction, or are you still kind of moving in that larger wholesale type direction?
Well, so we're gonna have both. Like, so I'm kind of like gonna relaunch the West Coast Connoisseur series here of super limited drops, high dollar clones. Those will be, they'll have all the metrics, all the variabilities, run in different environments, kind of deal. And to me, that's what people will be getting to pay for, is like that kind of level of exclusivity and testing. I have a whole nother set of stuff that we're going to release too, which is going to be more catered toward the wholesale market. and lower dollar stuff you're gonna have to be buying in bulk, but you'll be able to get a lot. Whether it's we've got all kinds of things we're gonna release under that framework too that just people don't have that people love because we're always going through seeds.
So, speaking of always going through seeds, what kind of stuff are you hunting right now that you guys are stoked on, that you're excited about?
Okay, so hmm, probably so we try to do when we pheno hunt, we try to pheno hunt by line so we can look at most of a line together, whether it's a male or something like so like we just did, 200 rainbow belt seeds together. It was like 180 or something like that. But we, all the rainbow belts and all the rainbow belts crosses that we like, we'll do all those together. It's just, in my opinion, it's a much easier way to compare things rather than we've got, some oranges in this room and some stuff in that room. I like to synthesize our flavors, like as the connoisseurs would essentially call it. And so right now we're doing a bunch of the fried ice cream gun chest stuff that the Ratto Ronin guys did. So we're feeling really lucky to be able to be testing that stuff. So we got banana cannons fried ice cream gun chest. We've got blueberry pie fried ice cream gun chest, hard candy fried ice cream gun chest, grandpa's gun chest fried ice cream F2s. And then in the next hunt behind that, we've got a bunch of the Pure Melt gear, if anyone's familiar with Pure Melt. So we've got Farmer's Daughter in there, and the Banana Melt Shake, and the Yellow Melt Shake, and the Grape Melt Shake, or Grape Jam, I think they called the Grape Jam Cross. And man, I don't normally kick all the game of all the phenos we're hunting, so if anyone's taking notes here, this is the time. Man, and I'm sure there's some things I'm missing off the top of my head that someone would slap me for. Red Zushi's in the hunt, and yeah, I mean, I've liked a lot of the Ronin gear and the raw gear, and so to be able to hunt the raw Ratto collab, which is the blueberry pie fried ice cream gun chest, really excited to do that because I actually found that clone, and so I know what its capabilities are. So it's a 3 Alight plant. It tastes incredible. Good color, hard to trim, but for it hits all the other boxes pretty much. It doesn't wash well, but and that's another clone that I might release this year too. So once we kind of get into some of the outcrosses of these things, we're gonna get some of these genetics that I think have just been really awesome and kind to us, to the people, in different forms, depending on like depending on how many boxes it checks, it'll have a different value essentially.
So you had mentioned maybe doing some future projects where you're looking to kind of collab with people on different genetics and cuts, and can you talk
Yeah,
about
so
that a
like
little bit?
Yeah, so like I put like to me where the West Coast Connoisseur evolution is kind of turned to is we're gonna be launching a new site here and stuff. So the last West Coast Connoisseur, if you get on the site now, it kind of turned into a seed bank thing, and we've mortgaged that opportunity, and we're going to come back with a series of seeds. Instead of just selling the same seeds that everyone else is selling, we're going to come back with we've been able to rope together a lot of the big breeders in the community: Raw, Y East, Ronin, Ratto. We've got some other cool projects in the works that I'm not going to quite announce yet until we really get into those. And no, we've got all the grounds working, but it's all of your popular guys who you follow, and we're putting together kind of what I call these 3x3 collabs of um, getting 3 strains run together and then releasing those. Whether it's Raw by Ratto, Ratto by Ronin, Pure Melt by Raw, whatever kind of angle, Y East by Ronin. It's all of your favorite guys have come together on this project. And so that it's been a real blessing for me that I've been able to spearhead this. and that we're going to essentially build a bank off of these collaborated efforts.
Nice.
Yeah, and so these they're going to be they're going to be collabs. They're going to be in limited numbers, not super limited to where you're like, 5 or 10 packs. They'll be, 50, 100 pack drops or whatever they are. And, just getting into the roots of these collabs and building more of it to where, if you want some of these seeds or cuts that come out of these programs, it's only going to be offered through those websites, like on the Ratto Ronin crosses, or Raw Ratto. I expect you'll see them on Ratto's website and Raw's website.
Yeah.
But some of the crosses that we make out of that will only appear on the West Coast Connoisseur website.
Cool. That's exclusivity.
Right. So just trying to get, and it's been a long road to get to this point to where we've got everyone working together and on the same page. And it's a lot of communication and a lot of effort to keep up with what everyone's projects are so that we can get everything together and make sure that everyone's on the same page, so that we're all moving forward together.
Yeah, I'm excited. I like that. I like that a lot of the community is starting to work together. You know what I mean? And it's good to see folks doing projects that kind of keep people excited.
When I started proposing these projects to people, people were kind of like, "This is insane." But we're going through so many great phenos and stuff that when I was willing to provide some of the phenos and stuff like that, and we could, essentially extend some olive branches, that we were able to, you know, like start to build some traction. And then, when you've got some of the other big dogs together, the other big dogs are willing to listen.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of this theme we have right now.
Well, that's cool. I mean, that's innovation, and that's cool. I mean, we need that constant innovation.
Right. And so, like, I'll hit a teaser drop here, like the Y East Raw collab that we're hunting a bunch of right now is the Animal Rescue, which is a Chem 91 animal cookie crossed to Bashio belts, which is a Rainbow Belts 41. So I'm hoping those are kind of like a Skittles Chem, purple plants, the light green of the Bashio belts. I'm hoping will improve the dark green color. Like Animal Rescue, it's got great. It checks a lot of boxes, except for it's too dark of a green for a general consumer. And so hoping that the rainbow belts can kind of light up some of those colors, and we could get to a place where we've got some really cool genetics between some people who have really spent some time looking around stuff, and that we're doing really deep pheno hunts so that the quality matches the effort.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
before we go, Jacob, because we've had a great time this afternoon. So before we get into shout outs and stuff like that, I wanted to give a shout out to everyone on the live stream. Awesome to have everyone in there. They've been chatting away and having a good time, talking about everything that you guys have been talking about today. But Jacob, I had a question that just came to mind when you were just talking about green weed and stuff like that. So are you finding consumers? Are you saying that they don't like a certain shade of green weed? I've heard kind of similar about purple weed. Like some people are like, I don't know. Like some people love purple weed. Like if you're a weed nerd, especially on like CannaBuzz, whenever we had like purple weed pictures, they get a lot of likes. But it seems like the mainstream consumer per se might not like purple weed because they're like weirded out by it. What have you seen?
Well, so I think there's two sides of that. Is one, I think there's the make green weed great again trend kind of deal from a lot of
Yeah.
people who are smoking again, like Archive and the Rainbow Belts thing. Worked out really well. We found this blue petrol cut that is absolutely like the shaggiest motherfucker on planet Earth, but smokes incredible. And I have a bunch of people tell me blue petrol is the best weed they've got this year. Like they hoard their blue petrol, whatever it is. And but the general consumer at the dispensary does not buy rainbow belts. They do not buy blue petrol because they're looking for this Instagrammable bud, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But until the customer gets purpled out, so to call it, is like they get too many purple buds that don't smoke on them, whether they're punch crosses or mat crosses or whatever it is that don't end up smoking that well for them. That's when they turn back to like, where's this OG? Where's the sour? And
Okay.
I'm looking for this green weed with a punch. I'm looking for this Chem 91, this sour, this OG kind of deal. And that's where like the green weed great again guys are versus like the absolute general customer needs to have color for it to be accepted. Like I tell people, if they can't post it on Instagram, they won't buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
Interesting.
And
Well,
I think it's a horrible place to be, but it is what it is.
well, let's switch to maybe great places to be. Are there any cannabis events or anything like that you're planning to check out this year that people can maybe catch you at?
Man, I don't have anything like truly in the works right now, other than we're gonna probably be at High Times in Oklahoma or something like that, or we'll do Cowboy Cup again. We just did an Ego Clash,
Oh,
so
cool.
that was kind of like our big event we just did recently. But yeah, I don't really have anything in the works, but like, I mean, look, if there's a Puffco event in LA, like count on me being there or something like that. So.
Nice, nice. Well, where can people check you out? Where can people follow you? Websites, all that good stuff.
Okay, so Instagram is West Coast Connoisseur, and that one's going to be deeply shadow banned, and so we'll come up with something easier. But so like we're actually going to launch a new website here soon, with the Ronin Seeds guys, and so it'll probably that's going to come up in the next week or two, so that's coming really fast. So it's essentially going to be a whole relaunch, and that stuff will be in my Instagram and in my Twitter, and you can find my Twitter in my Instagram. And and we're gonna, with how Twitter friendly or how weed friendly Twitter is becoming, we're going to be posting more and more on Twitter and less on Instagram.
Yeah, I see that already being a trend. I've seen things slow down a bit on Instagram, and a lot of people are kind of making that shift. Elon is flexing.
Yeah, I mean, from a couple avenues too, right? Like that Twitter is looking to try to pay their creators. I think that's a very important aspect of this whole thing. Like, as someone who's built multiple Instagram accounts over 30, 40, 50,000, and just to have them taken away to be
Right.
able to monetize your effort is very important. And especially as someone who knows they can make things that crack virally, that's really, I think that's just the start of things. And then just that Twitter is trying to be this everything app where, like, again, you can send money to people and you can do, like, again, just having features like that are so important. Like, okay, if I like what I'm seeing on Instagram and in this photo and everything, well, then now I got to go to Raw Genetics website and see if I like it and punch in all my info. But I assume in a couple months, Twitter will be this place where it's like you like what you see, you can send money for it right there.
It
That's
will
that's awesome.
it will be interesting for sure. So your Twitter account is at WCC Canna. So
Yes.
so make sure to look that up, and then you can also follow CannaBuzz. We're at CannaBuzz app. So we're definitely going to probably be experimenting on CannaBuzz, or sorry, on Twitter a little bit more as well, just because if you're watching this and not sure what we're talking about, they announced this past week that they're cool with cannabis advertisements. So that is going to be interesting to watch.
One of the things that I've read deeper into the policy on that is a standpoint that I found interesting is in the ad, you will not be able to show any product.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
and no consumption either. You can't show someone consuming weed, like smoking
Yeah,
it
that
or
makes
anything
sense
like
too.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading those rules too. Well, cool. So, thank you so much, Jacob. We really appreciated your time today. We had a blast catching up on everything that you're up to and learning out about strains. I'm sure we'll reach out to you again sometime and hear what you're up to. So I just love hearing about all the shifts and strains and different trends like that. It's really interesting to watch.
Yeah, and if anyone's watching live who, wants to drop in my Instagram or my Twitter DM and answer, I try to ask it or answer as many questions that aren't just like general grow questions.
Oh, cool. Nice.
So,
Well, once again, thanks everyone in the CannaBuzz community for joining us today. We've had a great time. If they're watching right now, stay tuned. After I end the official recording of this, I'll do a random pick of the winner of our Zooper plushers seeds from Tiki, and then also in future streams, we've got a bunch of Grove bags to give away. Have you ever checked out Grove bags, West Coast? Have you heard?
I've heard of them, but I've never seen them.
Yeah. Well, I guess you've seen them now over Zoom or whatever, but
Right.
they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it, man. And everyone watching, we hope you have a great rest of your week. And as always, growers love.
Growers love.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, and next week we have Green Sunrider coming on from Hungry Hollow Farms, and we'll be discussing some of the North Cal legacy growers and what they're up to. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be doing more seed giveaways. So if you want a chance to win some killer genetics, join the live chat, and we'll make sure that happens. And again, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate when guests come on and they're willing to really share information. And you've done a fantastic job of kind of breaking things down. And it's kind of led up to what we're at, kind of the modern scene that we're in today. So we and all of our listeners really appreciate your time. And thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, man. And if I can leave anyone with a closing thought, it's that I'm really a product of the current commoditized market. I started in it from the black and turned current. So,
Nice.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. And it's been a good one. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon.
Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace.
Growers love.